Hello, welcome to a top 10 video. Today I'm going to go over my top 10 favourite commander decks to use in paper pretty much, covering all the guilds, so Azorius all the way to Orzhov. Let's begin. Okay, let's start us off with Azorius and Dragon Lord Ojutai. Now, I like to use a lot of dragons. Now, this guy is definitely probably one of my favourite dragons of all time, just because I used to use him in standard when it used to be the Esper Dragons standard deck. I used to use him and he used to win me a lot of games against, I think at the time it was like Abzan mid-range siege rhinos and stuff. So this guy's so good. Whenever he hits somebody, he literally uses the card Anticipate, which lets you look at the top three, put one into your hand. So the flavour of him is awesome. I love the idea of a commander doing something that is mentioned on another card. It's just really good resonant design, and I like the way it just bleeds into this card. I wish more cards were like this, where they refer to another card. Also, he's got hexproof as long as untouched, which is really good when you combine him with vigilance. So if I put in a Heliod in this deck, he's going to be untouchable, and it's a very difficult threat to get rid of, especially because it's got flying. But also you could build him more with Voltron and give him loads of artifacts to smash face, swords and stuff, makes him really good. So yeah, he's definitely one of my top dragons of all time. Absolutely love this card. Next up, we're going to go to Tally and the Kindly Lord. Now, bear in mind, this list is more focused at paper commander, so you've got 3 or 4 plays, makes stuff a bit better, just because this ability requires more cards being played at the table. So if you choose a number between 1 and 10 and your opponent casts a spell that has power, toughness, or mana value equal to that number, you're going to get to draw a card and they lose 2 life. Now, this is going to be pretty awesome. Most of the time, I think the average is 3.5, but you can't say decimal, so you have to go for 3 or 4, I'd say is a really good number. You'd be surprised how many cards actually have the number 3 referenced on them. It is pretty wild, and this will net you a lot of cards. It doesn't feel like it's something worth killing as well, so keep that in mind. You play this, it's just not as threatening as a lot of other things. It will get you a lot of card advantage, but yeah, it's kind of like a non-threatening presence in some ways. Yes, it makes them lose 2 life, but I think it kind of gets away a lot under the radar. This gets even more out of hand when you can clone Talion. If you could use ways to make non-legendary copies of him, it becomes really quite powerful. Being able to choose numbers 3, 4, and 5 is probably going to be where you're at if you have 3 of them out. And you know what? Achievement unlocked. If you manage to get 10 of these out and choose every single number, that's going to be pretty wild. But yeah, you're going to have to tell me in the comments below if anyone's ever managed to get 10 copies of the same creature. That's going to be pretty awesome. Moving on, Carder. Now, I'm a huge shit stirrer. I love stirring that shit around the pot, the table, everyone, making everyone mad. It's pretty awesome. It's a pretty unique way of playing. This is my go-to tribal deck in paper. This is probably the strongest uncommon card I think I've ever seen as a commander. You can tell that because they recently reprinted this in a starter commander pack deck for kids, and it became mythic rarity. It's the highest rarity upshift I've ever seen in my life. I think maybe Rustic Study would also be up there as well, but this is on a commander, so it's pretty cool. Instead of just leaving them uncommon, I don't know, commander rarity is a bit nebulous. It doesn't really make a difference, but yeah, the rarity upshift to me makes it feel cool because I picked him when he was uncommon and everyone else realised he was really good. But yeah, just bear in mind this is actually better than Goad, because Goad normally targets, which means anything that comes out after won't be affected. However, the wording on this is very unique. Makes a time-stamped ability until your next turn. Creatures your opponents control attack each combat available and attack player other than you available. Now, if you have cards that enable haste on opponent's creatures, which there are quite a few of, there's one I love using called Frenzied Saddle Brute, which is a 5/4 haste, and it says all creatures have haste as long as they're attacking your opponent. So that's going to be really powerful and fun. Just keep stirring that shit pot, making people kill each other. Now, the only downside is I only play a 3-player pod in real life, and when one of my opponents dies, this becomes pretty useless in 1v1, but as long as you try and keep both opponents alive at the same time, it's like a little mini game, and it's definitely fun to just... It's weird. You don't want to kill both. You don't want to kill one of them too fast, because if the other one's super powerful and you can't deal with them because all your stuff says Goad, it's definitely tricky. But this is probably one of my favourite commander decks of all time, and I'm really happy that I found this guy. So good. Next up, Clothes, God of Destiny. This is an absolute powerhouse. For 3 mana, it does a ridiculous amount of things, so many words. It sits there most of the time, people will not be able to kill it. It's inconspicuous, doesn't really do much by itself until people start cracking fetch lands and you're exiling lands from their graveyards left, right, and centre, even your own graveyard. And when you do that, you will be able to ramp. And if you're not ramping, you are dealing 2 to each opponent, which the word each is just ludicrous here. And you gain 2 life as well, which is nothing to sniff at. This will keep you alive. This will absolutely destroy control players. If you're playing 1v1, this is maybe a pretty good high tier commander deck, or a CDH level, dare I say. It just gets rid of a lot of graveyard threats, flashback. There's so many cards that care about graveyards now. This just seems to do everything, and the rest of your deck can be supporting it, killing things all the time, destroying things. So keep this in mind. If you're struggling against control, you don't know how to beat control, slide a Clothes in and see how that works out for you. It's just absolutely incredible card for 3 mana. It's definitely one of my favorite cards of all time, and it's just kind of ludicrous, the power level of this card. Next up, Kudsil Malamet Exemplar. We have another uncommon on this list now. Now, I don't actually have this card in paper at the moment because I already have 20 decks of various colors, but if I did make a Selesnya deck again, this would definitely be the commander. The fact your opponent can't cast spells during your turn is just wonderful. It's like a Grand Abolisher. And on top of that, whenever one or more creatures you control with power greater than its base power deals common damage to a player, draw a card. Now, drawing 1 extra card a turn doesn't seem that exciting, but it just replaces itself, and it's so good in an equipment deck or just a pumping deck. I think this is very push for an uncommon. I think if this was 10 years ago, this would definitely be a rare. The fact this is uncommon is just testament to how many legends they are pumping out in each set. And in order for them to stand out, they have to push them a little bit. I think if this wasn't a legend and it was a regular creature, it would be way too pushed. It would probably have the top ability, and then that would be it, I reckon. But yeah, I think this is really good. It fits in so many shells. The fact it's uncommon is kind of bewildering, but again, rarity is nebulous. It doesn't really mean much half the time. When you get stuff like this, it just makes you question, do we need 50,000 legends per set? You know, this would have been cool as a mythic and maybe increase the power toughness a little bit or give it something else maybe to push it to a mythic status. But it's just a shame because when you use this design space, it means that the design space is currently used for legends, so it'll be a while before we see this ability again. Who knows, maybe in 10 years you'll get a mythic version of this with something else stapled onto it. But until then, it's just awesome artwork, a cat wielding a giant sword dagger thing. Very cool. Stops control players, draws you cards. What more could you want in Selesnya? So apparently Selesnya is the colour of saying F you to control now, which is kind of interesting. Next up, TESSA Karlov. She is something that she's definitely been a commander that I've had for a while as well. And the fact that, yeah, my estimations of her have slightly gone down just given how power creep is around now, and there's a lot of ridiculous, powerful Orzhov decks. But if you make her kind of like not the focal point of your deck, so just say she's the cherry on top, then it works a lot better. I think if you play her out before you have other creatures, you are asking for trouble. But the fact she just doubles your death triggers is wild. There's a lot of cards that do that now. You know, the 5-color monocolor black Drifnod, which does double triggers. Obviously that's in the deck as well to have double, triple, quadruple death triggers. You know, this works so well with cards like Fleshbag Marauder. It comes in each player sacks a creature, but then it triggers some other things. Blood Artist goes off on this. The new Vein Ripper, which is Mega Blood Artist. Drain 2 on each creature death is just ridiculous with this. That'll be Drain 4 with TESSA Karlov out. But yeah, just so many things die and give you a trigger. You would be absolutely surprised. Look at some Simulacrum. That dies, you get a card. If it dies with her out, you get to draw 2 cards. Absolutely awesome. Really love this card. Really, really, really strong synergy. But again, power creep has shown its age a bit, and she's probably a little bit weak these days. But yeah, that's just the way time goes. The same can be said about Niv Mizzet PERON. I think when this guy first came out, he's a bit terrifying, but I think the mana cost is a huge hindrance. If you don't build your commander deck to have loads and loads of mana pips, then you are shooting yourself in the leg. Luckily in paper, I have thought about that a lot, and most lands tap for color. I think in a normal deck I might have 5 or 6 color sources which give you utility land tapping, but in this deck of paper I probably have 1 or 2, which is just the way it has to be. Triple blue, triple red is ridiculous. The payoff is kind of crazy, but that's why you put a few protection spells, hexproof counter spells. Now, I do not use combos in any of my decks willingly like Curiosity, so I do tend to avoid most of those things because it's just easy, and I'm not all about that easy stuff. We know Nivs, every single Niv is breakable at some point, but I just like to have a value. I want to get a card whenever you play a spell, especially it's basically like Nazal, right? Nazal, the 7-mana whale, whenever someone casts an uncreature spell, you draw a card. This is for instance of sorceries. It's just really good. If you give this guy Death Touch somehow, he can kill any creature when he draws a card, which is just ludicrous. I definitely think his power level is balanced now, considering he's, as I said, 6 mana is a hell of a lot for a commander these days. And if he dies, 8 mana just feels horrible. So something like Pact of Negation, just any 1 mana counter spells or less that can protect this guy is going to be really useful because you don't want to lose him. But yeah, this is in paper. This is basically a spells matters deck, and I just love it. Everyone can benefit. Well, not everyone can benefit, but you'll benefit from everyone's spells, which is just it's just so good, so fun. Absolutely love this guy. Again, another dragon. Next up, Tatsunari Toad Rider. This is one of I like to challenge myself a little bit. I like to take cards that look tricolour and make them 2 colours. So although this is a Sultai Commander colour identity, I have actually made it only Golgari. So it's a totally green and black deck. Even the mana sources, all green and black. No blue sources, no blue cards in the deck at all. But you know what? It still works perfectly well. I think it's nicer to kind of like subvert expectations and do that because it not only challenges yourself, but it gives you more options. Like this won't be listed under Golgari if you look on EDH Rec. But there's actually a lot of these cards that have these a hybrid mana cost in the activated abilities, which do grant you the extra color on top of the monocolor seen at the top card here. So it's pretty cool. So this is an enchantment tribal deck, which is nice because you can use all your powerful green and black enchantments, which there are actually a hell of a lot of. And it does so much when you cast an enchantment, you get a frog, and then when you cast an enchantment, the frog lets you drain for 1. So it really does build into each other and it just snowballs. And it can be kind of stormy, but I've not built it that way. There are actually a lot of big enchantments in the deck, so you probably won't get that many trains in the way I've built it, but it just synergizes so well with just your favorite spells. And I think that's okay to just build a card which harnesses build a deck that harnesses your favorite cards. I think that's something people should do more often rather than buy. I've seen people who just buy a deck list, like spend like $300 on a deck, get it, and then suddenly think, oh, this is shit. I really don't like this anymore. I think the best way to build is just from your collection and start up from there because you do not want to regret buying Magic cards. That's such a feel bad. And this is exactly what this happened. I basically had a surplus of black green enchantments. I thought, well, where are these going? They're not going to go in my Jeskai enchantments build, which is Hound by Kaka, but we won't talk about here because it's not part of the guilds. But I had to have a place to put them because I thought it'd be such a waste to sell them or get rid of them and just add a surplus. Also, just to note, this guy could also be a Voltron deck because you can make himself and a frog you control unblockable except by flying reach, which is weird because I don't think it even needed that to make this card good. I feel like you could have just given this guy, I don't know, Menace or something and just be done with it. But yeah, it's kind of flavorful, makes him and the frog go bouncy bounce and over the top of people's heads. And it's just kind of fun. Next up, Velomachus Lawhold. This is probably the closest thing I have to a combo deck. Essentially, it plays all your pretty decently sized instances of sorceries. And the way I've built this is I've done it so it's essentially extra combat spells. Now, you have to be very careful because a lot of extra combat spells say if it's your main phase, get an extra combat step after this. Now, when you play the spell, you have to cast it during your attack step. So be very cautious. And I've definitely missed a few rulings or legalities playing this incorrectly in paper, but that's, I guess, one good advantage of Arena. If you build this in Arena, then you'll have to follow everything Arena says, so you can't cheat. But yeah, even if it's just some removal spells or some funky token creation spells, it's really cool. Again, it does suffer from being 7 mana, so it's humongously big if it dies 9 mana. It just feels so unattractive. So it's kind of glass cannon, everything and nothing. But yeah, if this goes off, there are very big good chances that you win in 1 or 2 hits, especially with double damage spells, double combat spells, and other swords and so forth. But yeah, very fun, very powerful, humongous dragon. And then we have Galadriel, Elven Queen. This is actually part of, it's part of the Lord of the Rings pre-con that I bought, and I kind of kept it as intact as possible, only using the cards featured in Lord of the Rings sets to strengthen it. So it is difficult for now because there's only 2-ish sets that really complement the Lord of the Rings. But yeah, I tried to have a low power deck that might be used for new players. I think that's very important as well because out of the 20 decks I have, most of them are hardcore. And tribal is definitely the weakest archetype of deck, and that's why I don't have too many that do that, because you're not relying necessarily on the mechanics of the deck you want to get, you're relying on the tribe, which makes it a lot weaker. Even though it's a precon, it's pretty decent, but the thing that tribal decks suffer from is they will be annihilated from board wipes. If someone uses consecutive board wipes on you, your recovery rate is very, very low, especially given the criteria that I've had this as a precon with just a few additions. But I still think, I mean, I've not built too many Simic decks, but just the flavor, lore, artwork for this is so cool. And hopefully we'll see Lord of the Rings again one day and I'll be able to strengthen it. But yeah, that's definitely my favorite of the guild color commanders. So these are all my paper decks pretty much, apart from a couple that I don't have built right now. But yeah, tell me what you think below. Do you like my list? And you know, I do hope all of these cards eventually will be coming to Arena. I think the one that I'm most excited to come to Arena, I mean, let's be honest, I think most of these are in Arena, but they're really teasing me with this Ojutai guy. You know, we're so close. We've got dragons, kinds of Tarkir. We just need dragons, I think, of Tarkir. And then we'll be able to get my baby dragon, Lord Ojutai. So yeah, until next time, see you later. Like and subscribe. Watch more videos. Did you know that you can help my channel by watching another one of my videos? Go ahead, you know you want to.